This podcast and any written materials related to it represent the opinions of Lisa Kays and Paula D. Atkinson, and our guests to the show and any written materials. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. It is for informational and educational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back. You are listening to What If Nothing's Wrong with You? I am Paula D. Atkinson.
I am Lisa Kays.
Welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to get into some questions. We've already gotten questions from some of our listeners, which we're very excited about. And we welcome more questions, thoughts, ideas for future episodes, things you've always wanted to ask a therapist, but never felt comfortable asking a therapist, yours or anyone else. We are eager to hear those questions and answer them for you. So we're going to get into that after we get into a little chit chat. Lisa, what have you been watching with your children?
I've been watching Lost because we're late to everything, but also they weren't born yet. But my son heard about Lost on the bus and came home, and I was so excited because I had been waiting 9 years almost for this child to be ready to watch Lost. I didn't think he was old enough yet. He's never sustained attention for something this long, and he is so into it.
Except for Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Except for Taylor Swift, but that's even that we do in chunks. So it's like
in the car. Sure.
He's very confused by many plot lines, but so were most adults by the time this whole thing ended. What I've noticed, I will skip the matriarchal, patriarchal themes that I am now noticing.
Yeah.
But I watched it, I believe, I'm trying to think if it was before I worked at Colmac and met you. It would have been around that time. I didn't know about diet culture or fat phobia at the time. And rewatching it, I'm like, this is a whole new experience. Yeah. It is so fat phobic. There is a large bodied character named Hurley.
Right. I remember that. I didn't watch it, but I remember that.
And he is one of the best characters. He has all like the comedic lines other than Sawyer, but he does all the comedic stuff. He's one of the best, kindest, most lovely characters. His entire storyline is about the size of his body. His initial, they all tell their trauma stories. That's why I love, it's a trauma, whatever. His whole initial trauma was based on food.
Course.
On the island, all anybody talks about is like, oh, have you really been on this island? Because there's a whole time. Anyway, I don't want to ruin it, but everybody's like, are you sure you've been on this island? Like, you're still kind of fat.
You're still fat.
He's put in charge of the food supply, and that becomes a whole traumatic thing. His entire storyline is about the size of his body. Although there's also this psychic thing where he talks to dead people, and that's cool too. But I'm watching it. It's so interesting. Watching, and I'm just like, wow, I've watched Lost 4 times in its entirety. Let's not talk about why.
Wow.
It's like I would ping like, well, that seems, but it felt so normal to me, the fat phobia. Yeah. And now I know I'm healed in some way because I'm now watching it and I'm like, David, what is that fat phobia? And he's like, yeah, no, that's fat phobia. Okay. Can we just keep watching?
Very nice.
Yeah,
it is terrifying when you watch. I mean, I have clients who try to watch Friends and can't watch Friends anymore. And all of these things that we just rolled with. And now it's so lovely when there are shows I don't know if you're watching Baby Reindeer. That show is whoa. That show is intense. Jamaica, are you watching it?
I will start. Everyone has been telling me about it. That I need to watch it. Yeah.
Intense. You can only watch one episode an evening. Carlo and I watch that, and then we have to watch Abbott Elementary or something to wipe the slate clean, because it is so intense. But I love there are fat people on screens and nobody talks about it. It's not it's like Melissa McCarthy movies that she exists.
Mm-hmm. Is there a test for that? Like the woman test?
Yeah.
Remember the test that came out?
The Bechdel test.
Yeah. Yes. There should be one for fat people where we don't talk about that.
That they just exist in a body and they have thoughts, feelings, and ideas outside of food and fatness. It's so fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. It is happening. It's so great. Little Nicola Coughlan, who I'm obsessed with, who was on Dairy Girls and now is on Bridgerton. I've never watched Bridgerton, but I might, just because she is fat and having sex on a screen.
Mhm.
And it's not a plot line. Her fatness is not a plot line, is not part of the character. So great.
Yeah. There's a lot more shows now. And now I'm conscious of it, which I think
Yeah.
is great for more of us to at least be conscious of, like, oh, this is fat phobic. Oh, this
Yeah,
is
exactly.
not. And like, see the difference. That's
Yeah.
evolution. That's good.
It is good. Yeah. Speaking of fat phobia and diet culture and stuff, I know that I've told you about, I had a tooth removed this week. I'm 40 years old and I'm losing my teeth because I starved myself for 10 years. And it turns out if your body does not receive proper nourishment, it's also because I'm very white and people of British descent don't have strong teeth. Carlo and I talk about it all the time, that he's like been to the dentist like 4 times in his life. He's never had a cavity. The Italians are very strong foundation for their bones and such. The Brits, not so much. There was a lot of inbreeding on that tiny island for lots and lots of years. But yeah, my tooth fell out, or I got a tooth taken out, and it's been hellish. And so just another reason why diets are evil and starvation is trauma, and you should always just eat food, is because when you're 48 years old, then you have to get your teeth taken out. And this one was up in my sinus. It was really, the whole thing is really, really gross.
And yeah, it's been painful, like, for a long time. And I
For a
think
long
what
time.
you're saying to us all is we should eat ice cream. 'Cause it has-
Yes,
I think that's what you're telling me
that is what I'm saying. Yes.
for my teeth. And I should really just have a lot of ice cream.
I mean, I really do. When I was very, very sick and close to starving all the way to death, we had to get our bone density, figured out at the treatment center in the 90s. This is a whole thing. They were all very surprised that my bones were so strong, but it's because I was a fat kid that lived on ice cream. So you're welcome, bones. My mom was a proponent of ice cream for breakfast. As if you know Carol Atkinson, she ate ice cream for breakfast every day. We have strong bones. I don't know why that did not transfer to my teeth, but it did not.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm taking from this lesson, is that I should have as much ice cream as possible.
It's good for your bones and your teeth. Absolutely. Okay, I have an announcement, and that is that I am obsessed with a new pop star. And I can't believe I know a pop star that Nemeka doesn't know, because usually Nemeka texts me. Yours are more K-pop that you send me, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this woman is from Missouri, so it's not it's not K-pop adjacent. It's K-pop adjacent, maybe. So Chapel Roan is this adorable, weird little sprite, mermaid, pixie, weirdo lesbian. She's like if Carly Rae Jepsen and Tori Amos had a baby. She's so great. She loves drag. She like calls herself a drag queen, even though she's a biological female, but it turns out drag is art, and art is for everybody, regardless of gender. And her songs are so good. I know that this is a controversial statement, but I think Carly Rae Jepsen is a better pop songwriter than Taylor Swift. I think Taylor Swift is a poor man's Carly Rae Jepsen. I love Carly Rae Jepsen. And Chapel Roan is like a queer Carly Rae Jepsen. And she's kind of demented, which I really like. She's like a queer, demented Carly Rae Jepsen. Anyway, her song Pink Pony Club is such a banger. I am obsessed. I love that RuPaul is obsessed with her. So she played at Coachella, which is down the street from where I live now. And I didn't go, but I was involved because everybody who's around here is involved. She said at Coachella, and when she got up on stage, she said, "I am your favorite pop star's favorite pop star. I am your dream girl's dream girl. I am Chapel Roan." And she just like went into it, and it was so good. And that little soundbite is so brilliant that even RuPaul is on RuPaul's Instagram lip syncing to that little soundbite because it's so genius. And if that's not like the most incredible praise ever, I don't know what is. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. I can't wait to play this for my son. I'm going to play the song, get as a review.
Yes.
And this person is from Missouri.
Yes.
So those are my people.
Those are people.
Along with, do you know what show I'm talking about with the Someone Somewhere, the comedian?
Somebody Somewhere. Yes.
That's Missouri, right? Yeah,
It's
Missouri.
Kansas.
It's not, is it Kansas? It's the same thing.
Manhattan,
State
Kansas,
line,
yeah.
everybody's confused.
Nobody cares.
But like they like to pretend no one's queer in Missouri. And let me tell you, it's like not only are they queer, but they're geniuses.
They're
I'm here for it. I love it.
Yes, that's
Missouri
Bridget Everett's.
cornfields just growing queer geniuses on the DL. On the DL.
Yeah, that's Bridget Everett's show. That show is so cute. It is so good. The guy who's in that show that I'm forgetting his name now, he was my friend Tom's roommate in college.
The gay buddy? Buddy? I don't know anyone's name because I'm in menopause.
Yes,
I can't remember. I love that guy.
I know. He's really
the
sweet.
whole show is like a little bit of magic. I just love that whole
It's beautiful. The name of Chaperone's last album is Midwest Princess or Adventures of a Midwest Princess or something. So Lisa, this is like so up you and your son's alley.
We're doing it the next time we're in the car.
Get into it. Yeah. All right. You wanted to talk to me about hammer flowers.
Okay. The internet and the anger is fascinating to me. Nobody comments on my Instagram because I don't do anything interesting. There was one post I made about parking. It was like a parking. I was like, let me see if I can like stir up a little controversy with this parking thing, which of course turned into flagrant fat phobia. And like it was the most nonsensical thing I could have said. Biggest reaction, everybody's fighting. So I'm looking at this post. Because I'm in we're going to talk about our menopause adolescent creativity phase. I'm now following all the artists on Instagram because now I'm an artist because I painted once. One of the forms of art is you take flowers and you put it on a special, like a thick watercolor, and you literally hammer the flowers, and it comes out on the watercolor, like in color. It looks like you painted it and you just lift it off. This is my kind of art because it requires no ability to make anything. So I was like, this is fascinating. I go into the comments. Everyone is fighting. I'm like, this is the most non-controversial people. And I was like, is this real? People were angry that someone was hurting the by hammering them. And then all the people were mad at the people that were mad. They're like, it's so stupid. You're a big flower advocate.
Amazing.
Is this what all of the internet is like now?
Yes.
I was like, but I think the people advocating for the plants possibly were serious.
I mean, what did they think?
It was a world.
What do they think happens to flowers when they fall off of the plant?
They die anyway. Perhaps I am the one misreading this and everyone was kidding. It felt like genuine, authentic conflict, though. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth and hostility about whether or not the plant should be protected and whether or not this artist was committing some kind of... Anyway, I just needed to say that because the whole thing was amazing. A lot.
So the cool thing is that, like, if it's a bit, I love it. If it's not a bit, I love it. So, like, either way, I'm into it.
And you can't read tone. So I'm like, I don't know. I have no way of knowing if you're kidding. Either way, it was a world of entertainment.
I love it.
Top to bottom. And if I could find that paper, I'd hammer some flowers. I might find it at Michael's. I don't know.
Hammering flowers, and like I mean, I love the video you sent me. It looks so great. And I love things that are like like nature does a good job of making beautiful things. Let's just hammer it to its paper. Like somebody, nature already did a good job. Yeah, it's great.
Draw. I was like, this is my art form. This is great.
Well, you and I, as a callback from our last episode, you and I have been talking a lot about creativity, and I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as we did. We loved it, and it's like it inspired me to keep doing. I want to show those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see this painting that I did. I am so obsessed with her. She is a fat lady in a purple bikini with huge drag queen hair doing a Natarajasana dancer pose, and it says play. Isn't that great?
Awesome.
So great. I love her so much. I am so obsessed with her. And I'm also, as I think I said last time, I'm listening to Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, which is brilliant. And he keeps repeating over and over that the only thing you have to do in art is make yourself happy. is create things that make you happy. And I'm like, I'm a 10 out of 10. I'm already there. I'm painting things that make me delirious. So great. That's all it's about.
And you sharing that, I just hold on to that whenever I'm doing something and I start to go into this is so dumb. I'm never going to be good. I'm just like, I just have to make things that make me happy. So
Exactly. That's all there is.
Okay.
That's all that matters.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm having so much more fun. You guys, you can sort of see my little paint station back there. Again, those of you watching on YouTube. Isn't that fun? And I'm just like painting the dumbest stuff. And I like make colors and I'm like, I like this color.
I love making the colors. It's so I
fun.
can't make anything with them, but making the colors is fun in itself.
Great. It's so great. Paint by the line from The Artist's Way always comes into my head when she says, paint is fun, goopy stuff. And I always think of that when I'm painting.
True.
Yeah.
So
and you're
fun.
taking violin lessons.
I have retaken up the violin, which I quit at the age of like 12, 13, because it was too intimidating and whatever. And it was all scary. We'll probably have a whole episode about that.
Yeah.
But I also managed to break a string. The first time I tried to practice, I was trying to tune it, and I evidently don't know how to do that. So the lovely people I rented the violin from are going to fix it for me, because that's part of the violin rental. It is very cheap to rent a musical instrument and to take lessons. I had no idea
that it's so affordable.
And I was like, can an adult do this? I actually was talking to somebody whose kid takes, she was like, yeah, there's adults in there all the time. And I was like, well,
why not?
I'm going to be one of them. So yeah.
I just feel like giving yourself permission, again, like that is my life motto, is permission. I think permission is the cure for literally everything. And like giving yourself permission to be creative and do stuff, not because it will make money and not because you will achieve it and not because you're in competition with everything. It changes your brain. It heals your brain.
I actually think there is something, the more I think about with the violin and how there is something I think extraordinarily by taking up something that you kind of know you will suck. Like I will literally never, I don't think, be good at this instrument.
Right.
And there is something profoundly empowering about being like, I am still going to spend money and take up time and do that. Like, why do we only allow kids to do that? It's such an like that was, I'm like, my son can take piano lessons. Why can't it's such a weird, it's like, oh, well, you're a grown up, so now you don't get to ever do anything fun. It has been wildly empowering. I'm like, I am allowed to just do stupid stuff and maybe
just for self
never be good at it.
Enrichment.
It's like freeing. And then it leads to more things because you're like, well, now I want to try that. I don't know. I'll try that. What the heck?
Who cares? Like, I used to say when I taught The Artist's Way that like, we have permission until, through college to just like take whatever interests you. And then the minute we graduate from college, it's like, now you go to work and you watch TV and you die, right? Like that's the only thing you're allowed to do now. Yeah.
I have an essay I wrote about this years ago. I should dig up that essay because I wrote a whole rant about like, why don't we let adults, then we yell at adults for like not being in shape, but we take away all the fun things like the sports and the whatever that would make it fun to be in shape, and the community. Like I would like an adult swim team. Yeah. Put me on a swim team. I will now. I couldn't appreciate it as a kid. I would love it now. Put me on a stupid adult swim team or a soccer team or something.
I think moving here where everybody is retired except me is helpful in that way, because everybody is like going to jewelry making class at noon on a Tuesday, or there's literally a billion white people down the street playing pickleball right now.
Yes. That's a cult. That's another cult.
That is a cult, but like good for them. At least they're doing something fun and they're moving their bodies in ways that feel fun, and they're not just going to the gym, which I go to the gym. That's fine. But like why does everything have to be hard? And why does everything have to be a slog?
Serious.
Although the pickleball people
and
pickleball people can be serious. You have to watch out for the pickleball people. They're not playing around.
I heard something this week and I can't stop repeating it in my mind, and I think I'm going to make a meme, and maybe I'm going to paint something about it, because I'm going to just paint all my memes. The biochemical opposite of trauma in your brain. Do you want to guess what it is?
Play.
Yep. The biochemical opposite of trauma in your brain is play.
Yeah.
So play heals trauma.
Yeah.
And you know this from improv. You know this from
and from my children. I've learned more actually from improv.
Yes.
And from watching how you work with children whose brains go into fight or flight instantly. You do all of it with play. all
Yes.
of it. You can't do any, you can't teach anything, you can't do anything until you have play and a connection. And so I'm like, whoa, that is like
True.
interesting to watch.
Yeah. Well, I see that with our dogs, right? That like when we first got the second dog, how did they introduce each other to each other? They played,
Like playing.
of course, right?
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course, it makes so much sense. And that's why when I taught my class at GW, I feel like I was the only professor that they had that was like trying to make them laugh. Because if you laugh, you retain the information. And if you can laugh, what's more absurd than us all believing that some bodies are superior to other bodies based on something as silly as adipose tissue on the outside? And if you can laugh at that, like you remember it, it stays in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a very,
So play. Yay.
Bring it.
All right. So we will continue to give everybody updates on our our second adolescence.
And feel free to go on it with us. And let
Yeah.
us
And
know
give us
what
updates.
weird hobbies you're taking up. Maybe you're cutting flowers with scissors. We don't know. What else
Yeah.
could you? You could
What-
wrench flowers.
Right.
You could,
Carlo has gotten into stickers. He's really into
Oh,
stickers.
really?
Stickers are amazing.
Yeah, they
Stickers
are.
so great. I mean, look at my water bottle, right? And he used to always make fun of me. Look at this one of Freddie Mercury. Isn't that
Oh, wow.
amazing? I love it so much. He used to make fun of me because I put stickers on everything, and then he got into stickers, and he's like,
Yes.
stickers are great. So let's talk about when therapy feels stuck, or when you feel like maybe you want to go to your therapist. We talked about this a little bit at the first time. Our first episode about like a lot of times people go to therapy and then they're like, I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to quit. And so Lisa and I want to talk a little bit about this. The first thing I want to say is this is a friend of mine who will remain nameless, who sent me this text after listening to the podcast, and they have given me permission to read this on the pod. So I hope, and when I asked them, they said, I hope it really helps people to hear it. This is them speaking. Quote, I tried to leave group therapy for 2 years at least, but they kept wanting me to process what's behind me wanting to leave. A long-term thing for me is to not stay too long in things that don't serve me anymore. So group therapy kept undermining my intuition that I needed to get out. And I felt so fucked up wanting to leave because I fear that I'm unable to fully commit to relationships. And group therapy fed into that fear by wanting to dig into my desire to leave instead of just accepting that my intuition was telling me to get the fuck out. Yes. So Lisa and I talked about this on our first episode, but we want to talk more about like, this is what therapists are trained to do in a lot of ways. They're trained to dig into what you want in terms of why you want to leave, instead of just respecting the fact that you want to leave.
yeah. Or, I mean, and yes, we are supposed to dig into it a little.
Yeah.
2 years is not a little.
No.
It's not a little. That's if someone is consistently for 2 years and there's no advancement in the
Right.
dialogue, like we have to let them go. But I
Yeah.
think well, there's so many things about this, and we're going to stay on the stuckness rather than like, but I think we want to name that some therapists are trained, not all,
Mm-hmm.
that it is a failure if a patient leaves you.
Yeah.
It is considered your failure for
Right.
not holding the relationship and not like completing the work. But that is
Whatever
very,
the fuck that means, by the way.
yeah, that creates an issue because aren't we supposed to like work ourselves out of a job? I mean, that is the
Yes.
idea. So it basically means you can never succeed or never graduate or never like be deemed it's appropriate for you to leave. It sets up a very odd dynamic.
Totally.
Not to mention that the therapist has their own attachment issues, which if the therapist is somebody who panics and freaks out when someone wants to leave them, and then in their training, that gets reinforced.
Yeah.
Is right. You shouldn't let them leave. You should keep them with you. We're going to deal with it. Like it, instead of normalizing, like, yeah, sometimes people leave. You can't see that as, you can't like, know, that it's complex. We want to look at it complex because sometimes, again, it is resistance. It is whatever. But that there's this way that like we're kind of taught like to never let someone leave.
I
It would
know.
never. I mean, I myself so identify. I was literally like, I've met my treatment goals. I came into therapy wanting to date, meet someone, and get married, which we could analyze for 1,000 years in
I'd like to-
another
I have
on another
questions.
plane. But I literally was like, I have a husband and 2 children. I feel like our work here is done.
I
Like,
graduated.
my child is 5. I mean, it was like, and it was still like, well, no, there's this, and it's like,
Oh,
it's
I
this
don't like that.
perfectionistic. Of course, there's this. I'm not perfect. I'm not. What am I going to reach enlightenment? But
Yeah.
there's a point where it's like we remove people's agency to be
Yes.
like, I think I've done enough, or I've done what I want to do for now, or like, I'm
Or
okay.
I want a break from working on
Yeah.
myself.
Or one of our spiritual teachers who I love was like, I let myself accept that there are certain things about me that aren't
Yes.
going to get addressed in this lifetime.
Amen.
And I am allowed to decide that.
Yes.
And when she said that, I was like, oh, I'm going to make a list of the things that I'm just going to be like, you know what? This is probably not great for me, but it's not really on my to-do list.
Totally.
For my, like,
this lifetime.
but
Yes.
because there's a lot of other things I want to do in life. And
Exactly.
like, I can't, it's kind of like dieting. It's like, I could probably diet and weigh 90 pounds, but there'd be a lot of other things I couldn't do. So I'd rather go live my life. Also, I want
Well,
to keep my teeth. I mean,
exactly. The teeth are important. And also the intersection of diet culture and, Western white people psychotherapy culture is very similar because there is this like carrot dangling out there. And as soon as you have the right body, then you'll be happy, joyous, and free, and the planets will align and the birds will take flight and blah, 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 blah. And it's the same thing with a lot of psychotherapy. As soon as you are truly have done all of the work, whatever the hell that even means, then the planets you'll be perfect and everything will fall into place and you'll get the husband and the kids and great, look at you now, you have a husband and kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're wanting these concrete, I
Yeah.
mean, you can keep somebody in there forever kind of thinking this, and let's not, I think we should also just frame and not pretend that therapists don't get paid.
Yes.
We have, and we are never really taught to talk about this
No.
part in the count. We're always supposed to talk about the client's issues with money and the patient's issues and transference with the money, but we're never taught how to talk to clients about, of course, I have a financial interest in you staying. How is that
Clearly.
factoring into this relationship? Do you think about that? Am I taking that into account? Because let me tell you, had supervision sessions where I was told like, oh, you can absolutely factor in your business needs. Oh, your business needs are part of and I was always like, that feels not right.
Your business needs are a part of whether or not you keep a client.
Or decisions I make for
yeah.
what kind of treatment what groups I may need to fill, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just would want, not that everyone is because I never made decisions that way that sat grossly with me. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
But there are I just think it's disingenuous to pretend that isn't there.
Totally.
And to not we have a business interest to keep you. And I really work hard now that I've to check that and be like, what is this about? What is that? Is this, do I see resistance in the client? But it's weirdly, we're not trained at all to check that.
No,
at all.
And not at all.
Have you ever experienced a conversation in any therapy training about our financial interests? I don't think it's ever come up once.
No. And in fact, because every training I've ever been in, I've been paying the person. So it's not like I was getting any free training, because that's the other thing about this job. You don't get it. You're supposed to do all your CEs on fucking Saturday and you have to pay for them. And so, no, of course not.
Yeah.
And and you're allowed, I want to empower, this podcast is all about empowering the clients. You are allowed to bring this up. You are allowed. And if your therapist balks at it, they're allowed to balk at it. But you are allowed to bring up if you have financial questions, if this is all, you are in the driver's seat. You get to decide what we talk about, what we don't talk about. Yeah.
And I would consider it, no one's ever asked me, but I would consider it a very fair question for someone to say, let's talk about this group and like me staying in and like like obviously you have a financial interest. How do I know that that's not factoring into our
Yeah.
relationship? Like I would totally be like, that's a great question. Like you
That's a
should be
fantastic
thinking
question.
about that. I should be
Absolutely.
able to answer you. Like, and,
Yeah,
but
of
it
course.
doesn't happen. I mean, I think clients are terrified to have
I
that
know. And I think
conversation.
clients have
And
been,
yeah,
trained to not ask these questions.
right.
So the other thing that we wanted to talk about was, so I was hanging out with some friends and they were talking about situations where they feel like maybe they want to see their therapist less. Maybe they don't really know what they're working on anymore. The therapy feels kind of like stuck, or they feel like they don't have a lot to talk about. Does that mean that they shouldn't see their therapist anymore? And first of all, I want to say that like when you feel that, the therapist felt that 2 sessions ago. So, and not that it's always our job to bring it up, but if you feel that, please bring it up. It will not be a surprise therapist when you say I feel like I don't have a lot to talk about. We know. So Lisa and I just want to talk about some things that might be going on there. So I love the part, Lisa, where you said the reasons it might feel stuck, but maybe it's not, but maybe you just don't know how to talk about things that aren't like I'm in crisis.
Yeah. So, and I think we've talked about, I feel like especially with women, but not
Yeah.
always, but it's like most people come to therapy in like there is a crisis
They've hit a
happening, like a
bottom of some sort. Yeah.
major depressive episode, a divorce. Am I getting into, there's something hard. Somebody's died, like may die, whatever. There's something really hard or really bad symptoms that have come
Yeah.
up. And then it's like that gets kind of worked out, or like there's some stabilization, and then suddenly they don't know what to talk about. And
Yeah.
the number one reason, I feel like 90% of the time when I finally look under this, they say, well, I don't think that like this matters. It's not important.
Yeah.
Like I just have low grade anxiety every day and I feel agitated and horrible, but like, don't we all? And, or like, well, who am I to be upset about this when like this is going on in the world or someone else doesn't
Right.
even. And so there is this minimization that keeps people from understanding like that's what you're here for. That's
Right.
what I've actually had people say to me, I skipped therapy because I was crying and depressed. And I'm like,
Totally.
that's, and I have to talk
Like
to
not
them
going
because
to the
part of our
chiropractor.
job is to be like, but those are usually people that were shamed for
Yeah.
having feelings. Their feelings were minimized. And I have to talk to them about like, that's what this is for. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to always be in a good mood and entertain me. Like, I'm
Right.
not,
It's not a
that's
performance.
not your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's like not going to the chiropractor because your back hurts. Yeah. Yeah. I've had this too. The way this shows up a lot in my clients is like I'll have people show up to see me who are in like a really bad way with their eating disorder or disordered eating, or like they're binging at night or blah, 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 blah. Right. And then when that sort of falls away and maybe they're not engaging in that really explicit behavior around food or whatever, then they just live in like this low grade suffering of like loathing their body. And then it feels like, oh, I'm all done. And it's like, no, we have to, I want peace, freedom, and sanity in totality as much as we can get, right? Where it's not just that, it's not only when your teeth are falling out that you should come and see me. I want to help you get past like the internal experience. You're still in a lot of pain. It may not be coming out sideways anymore, but I can recognize that you're still in a lot of pain and you don't have to live that way.
right, because obviously you were doing the behavior to manage pain. That it does not go away, often gets worse. When you
Yes.
get sober or,
Stop
regulate the
binging at night or
behavior.
whatever. Yes.
And then everybody's like, well, that shouldn't matter yes, I just want to lay in my, bed and
Right.
not talk to anyone and be miserable and sad, but that's fine.
But I don't want to murder my husband anymore, so I don't need therapy anymore. Yeah. So a lot of it, I like the way you sometimes say it around like, and sometimes people need a little bit of help on like, this is how you therapy. Like, this is actually what we're here to get in and heal. Yeah.
And that conversation is the therapy.
Yes.
It's like, that is the therapy. Right. So if you have a therapist who can't like do that or kind of sort it with you, like that's not great, because like that's the whole thing, is to talk about what's keeping you from bringing this up, what makes this hard to talk about, what makes you think it's not important. Like that's the point of
that's
the
what
therapy.
Yeah.
So if you're going in talking about like the weather for 3 weeks and nobody's saying anything, that's not a great
Maybe.
something is awry.
It's something that the therapist might want to bring something else up. The other thing that came up in this conversation I was having with some amazing loyal listeners is that, and I'm going to use an example from a client years ago where she had a situation. She was married to somebody who was just a real asshole, and she didn't want to tell me because she had had therapists in the past with whom she shared how much of an asshole her husband was. And the therapist was like, great. Okay. So how do we get you to leave your husband? Right. And my client didn't want to leave her husband. She just wanted a place to talk about how much of an asshole he was, which is great. You can do whatever the hell you want. You don't, right? And so that place, this is what I was talking about with some friends about, like being in a place where like, no, I'm choosing this, and I know it may not be the right thing, whatever the hell that even means, right? I'm afraid to tell you because you're going to continue to tell me that I should just leave him or I should just change the situation. And so what I want to say is a lot of times therapists are trained to empower their clients to change circumstances that don't serve the client. But if that's all the therapist can't do, the therapist can't help you can't help you if you choose to stay in the situation. You want a therapist who can be there and be like, okay, you are an adult. You get to do, if you are jumping into a swimming pool of razor blades, then maybe we might try to stop you. But if it's like you're a grown adult, you're not in any danger, and you're choosing this circumstance, and the therapist is continually just challenging your choice, then, it's okay to say to the therapist, I need you to know that, like, this is what I'm choosing. If you want to talk about that, then great. If you want to continually challenge my choice, that's not really helpful anymore. Does that make
No.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that comes to also, it's like, what is that? I think partially therapists are taught
Yeah.
and trained. We have to get people on the right track, right? So
Right.
you could be sitting with someone who's like, it's my job to make you live like the right life. Like I
Whatever
hear
the-
this
Yes.
from like, supervisees, younger therapists who are kind of like have that that it's like, oh no, we don't have to like fix like
Right.
whose idea of right life. I don't know what lessons you need to learn in this life. Like,
Totally.
but that it's also as a therapist, and I think sometimes I'm allowed as a therapist to directly, and I should, if I really cannot tolerate, like if
Yeah.
you are doing something so that I'm like, I cannot watch this train wreck.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to say that very
Yes.
clearly and directly, to say, what you're doing is so painful for me to watch at this point.
Right.
I can't sit with it.
Yeah.
But
Of course.
instead, I think it gets enacted as like, you have to change.
Right.
Which is the exact dynamic that is the enmeshed, like, problematic dynamic that
Right.
somebody is probably in, that they can't leave
Or probably
so
grew
it's
up
like,
in. Yeah.
and I think therapists often forget, like, we can be assertive and have agency. Like,
Yes.
I'm not going to abandon you and be like, so this is our last session. Good day. Right. I'm going to talk to you about that and like give
Right.
you referrals and make sure you're okay. And like, but we're allowed to like take care of ourselves. And
Yeah.
it's like, we do otherwise have to, if I'm going to keep working with you and you're going to keep drinking dangerously, or you're going to stay with the horrible abuser, or you're going to do whatever, I need to be able to sit with that. And if I
Right.
can't, I need to say I can't, and I need
Yes.
to remove myself at whatever point the limit is getting reached. And that's okay. But I
And
shouldn't
it's okay.
passive aggressively be like,
You need to
you
do
must
something different
change.
because I'm uncomfortable. Right.
Right. And
Right.
I think what I've noticed with myself, the more I've kind of, is I do try to get it to where, I think, if we want to talk about healthy, I think
Yeah.
my goal with that person who is going to stay in a really horrible situation is to be like, can we agree on the realistic terms of what's happening?
Oh, I like
Like,
that.
can we have language around, I am in an abusive relationship. I
Right.
know that it's abusive.
Right.
I am unable to leave right now.
Yeah.
Like, these are the reasons I can't leave right now, psychologically, financially, whatever.
Sure.
And like, can we get a clear, as opposed to like, oh, I'm a, he's not abusive, because that's a very different mental place to be
Yes.
like, he's abusive and I'm stuck in this and here's why,
Right.
versus I don't know, is this so bad? And gaslighting yourself.
Yeah.
I consider that a win of therapy to
Oh,
change the
totally.
mental. It's not about
Tell the
your
truth.
situation, it's your mental perspective on it and your emotional
And your ability to,
perspective
yeah, to tell the
and to
truth
be
about it.
honest with
Yeah.
yourself, not my truth, your truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that is something that I will keep working with people on. Like, is that feel true to you? Like, is
Yeah.
that right? Like, are you talking yourself out of, did you abandon yourself to make that statement? Like,
Right.
and sometimes people will hear that, I think. Like, I will sometimes mirror to someone, like,
Yeah.
and they'll be like, "Oh, you think I should leave?" And it's like, "No,
No.
I'm mirroring what you said." Like, and
Yeah.
that's an important distinction, I think.
Yeah. I agree. Again, permission, but like everybody's allowed to do whatever the hell they want. One thing that I say all the time that now I've gotten my partner to say is everybody's doing precisely what they want to be doing. Want being a very broad term. And so if you're in a therapeutic relationship and it feels like the therapist really needs you or wants you to make a change that you're not really interested in making, then you get to bring that up. You get
Yeah.
to say like, "Oh no, this is my choice." And maybe
And
that means that there's not a lot more to talk about. Okay.
yeah, and I would hope that, I mean, if you're in, I would want the therapist, if I were to have a dream scenario, to be able to own whatever is happening.
Yeah.
To be able to own, like, "You're right, I am having trouble watching you
Yeah.
engage," and to be able to in some not have it be like, "Well, what is this about that you think I'm judging
Yeah.
you?" And I am sitting there judging. It's like that,
Totally.
if you get that response, like, just run, because it's like, then
'Cause
you're
then the
into
therapist can't
abusive,
hold.
gaslighting relationships.
Right.
But it's like, if you're sitting there judging or having trouble with somebody, own it. We're
Yeah.
allowed to do that. Yeah, this is hard to watch. What is that like for you to hear? Have you
I
heard
mean,
that from other people? Do you think your friends might feel like I feel?
yeah. Right.
There's a road
I
we
say to
could go
clients all the
down.
time, I feel really protective of you. I just feel
Yeah,
really protective. This is hard for me because I feel really protective of you.
yeah.
Yeah. And you're absolutely allowed. You get to do whatever the hell you want.
You
And then sometimes I'll say like, in my fantasy, win the lottery and move to Aruba and get it right. Like I'll do that a lot of times too. But then always, always, always I come back to, and you get to do whatever the hell you
Yeah,
want.
because you don't have to cure my
My
anxiety about
anxiety.
you.
Right.
That's
Which,
not your job.
right.
That's
Right.
my job. And
Right.
that is a very healing, actually, stance
That's
for
called a
people.
corrective emotional experience when
Yes.
you're finally in a relationship with somebody who is interested in managing their own feelings and
Yeah.
you don't have to manage our feelings. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like,
You wanted to talk about like with neurodiversity and that kind of thing when the therapy feels stuck.
yes, I've learned partially from my kids, also from the people in my practice, that there's also, I think, especially with ADHD, but certainly with autism too, there's a difficulty with knowing
Yeah,
a how to name a feeling. Like,
sure.
traditional, like, what are you feeling is not a great question, I've learned. And I've had to learn with a
Yeah,
lot of clients, like, how to reorganize what I ask and how I ask it. And sometimes they're just like, "You're asking me the dumb question again that I can't answer." And I'm like, "You're right, I am.
I
Why
am
was
too.
I doing that?" And so I think that's another place where we have to, as therapists, work to, again, either figure out how to accommodate that with somebody, or like teach them again, like, how to, because if
Yeah.
somebody can't self-advocate, I think therapists often view that as like, "Oh, they don't want to do the work. They
Oh
don't want
God, I
to
hate
they don't
that
want to
so
get
much.
better." And it's
They're
like,
being
I think
resistant to,
sometimes,
yeah,
yeah, they don't know how, or they've never,
exactly.
it could be a million reasons they've never been with someone actually helpful. I mean, there could be all
Right.
kinds of, but like, when people don't know how to use therapy, like, I dig around about, like, what's happening and what have
Yeah.
been your other relationships, whoops, with helpers, but also for neurodivergence around, is this even like the right, either kind of therapy, the right language I should be using?
Yeah.
Because I've learned a lot about, you have to really adjust, and people can feel like, "Oh, I'm failing." I think the reason we wanted to talk about this is what ends up happening is the patient leaves feeling like, "Oh, I failed again.
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to get better. I guess I'm still a fuck up. I guess
Right.
I'm so whatever resistant."
Right.
And it's not
No.
often the case. It's like, either the therapy type may not have been right,
Right.
but it's like it's an interactive process.
And
And
I think
just because it's not working, it's not always you.
no,
Like,
in fact, it rarely is. The therapist
no.
is like, they work for you. I think that sometimes I know that I'm guilty of this probably because I've been doing it for so long now. I used to, when I lived in New York City, there were so many yoga teachers who were former dancers, and it made them bad yoga teachers because like their body just did whatever they wanted whenever they did it. And so they were bad at teaching yoga because they had been dancing since they were like 4 or whatever. And I feel like that sometimes with therapists, that if therapists have been doing it a long time, they don't know how to like gently teach a new client how to therapy. Right. And they think
Right.
everybody knows how to therapy, but like not everybody and we've talked about the TV therapist. Some of that is bad.
And therapy is weird. It
it's
is a
super weird.
skill. It is
Yeah.
not a normal. The idea that someone would come in and just like know the rules
Yeah.
is
Wild.
highly unlikely. I mean, I don't know how that would happen.
Therapy was invented by white, neurotypical, straight, cis men. So if that doesn't describe you and that doesn't describe your brain, then, Lisa and I and lots of women and people of color and queer people are trying to get it not to reflect only white, cis, straight men brains. But that's who invented it. So if that doesn't describe you, then it may not come super easily. And I don't want that to deter anybody from seeking help, from seeking therapy.
No, and
But if
so
you don't know
much
what's
of
happening, ask.
right. Or yeah, and I think the other thing that contributes is that if you come out of like narcissistic abuse,
Yes.
cults, any kind of abusive family system, what
Yes.
children learn to do early on is
Yes.
assume everything is their fault. Like if someone is abusing them, it is their fault. The other person is in the right. I screwed
Yes.
up. The same thing happens in therapy.
Right.
So if you start thinking, I am
It's my
doing
fault.
this wrong,
I'm doing it wrong.
like
Exactly.
I'm the failure, if it's stuck and you're like, you need to remember you are paying me.
Yeah.
And it is
it's my job.
it is actually my job to make
Yes.
this work. And
Not
like
yours.
to not take, because if you take it all on,
You don't get anywhere.
You're in the same place you started. And a
Right.
good therapist can sense that and I feel like I can get under that pretty quickly now, but
Yeah,
it's
me too.
like not a, but you
You're
can
doing great.
inquire, but like don't assume it's you.
No,
It's
and
an
ask.
interaction.
Yes. And it's not a performance. It's
No,
you are
and I
being
might
healed.
not be the right fit for you.
Yeah.
I might need to find you somebody who's different, and that
Yeah.
is okay. Like that is a very okay thing.
Great. And so the last little thing we wanted to say is, and this is something that Lisa and I were talking about, there is something that I'm noticing in my life and in with clients, and that is that there were relationships formed, there were things that we did, there were things that we involved ourselves with during COVID that we may not need anymore, and that's okay. And our culture is so weird about death. And so we're so weird about letting things die. And we're so devoted to the idea that the longer something lasts, the superior it is. Relationships, life, hair color,
Being in a
whatever.
job.
Being in a job, right. We are obsessed with the longevity of things, which is so weird because nothing lasts forever. So it actually goes against the entire vibration of the entire universe. So it's okay to let things die. So if you are in a therapeutic relationship or a group, I know for me during the pandemic, I have this little group of friends and we were so close during the pandemic. We were a little pod and it was super fun. And it's been painful to have it end, but it's also been freeing to have it end because it was necessary. The pandemic was a very, very specific time in all of our lives and we were all going to die and it was intense. So it's okay to let things die. It's okay to say like, this really served me and now it's no longer serving me. And that's all right.
And as you were talking, I was thinking about what a disservice we do. Like when I think about friendships that I had at like specific times,
Yeah.
that were like wonderfully beautiful,
Perfect.
great. And then it's
Absolutely.
like they get diminished. And I actually hear my groups talk about this a lot. There's this like guilt Or this like, oh, I guess it
Right.
wasn't a real friendship. I mean, I feel like all this comes from the monogamy, whatever nonsense.
It is
And it
all
affects like, and
heteronormativity.
it's like, we don't have to diminish that by saying like, oh, it wasn't a good friendship because it didn't last your whole life. And to be clear, therapists are like triply and quadruply indoctrinated into all this stuff. I mean,
Indoctrinated.
we could just talk about how if it doesn't last the entire millennia, it was not a real relationship.
So
But
weird.
it's like, what a diminishment of otherwise beautiful, transformative relationships that might have been like profoundly meaningful,
Absolutely.
but just weren't intended. I mean, your whole life is very long. If you had every
Yes.
friend that you ever made, that's a lot of people. I mean, how would you have meaningful relationships with all those people?
You
It's not
can't.
meant for that. But we diminish things. and
Right.
it's
We
unfortunate.
assume that, that longevity equals superiority, and that is not actually the case. Look at nature. Again, if you always just go back to nature, what does nature tell you? Shit dies. Shit dies all the
And
time.
then you can hammer flower it.
And then
We're
you
gonna
can
bring it
hammer
right
flower
back
it.
around.
And
It's
then
gonna
somebody will
die.
get mad at you on the internet. Yeah.
You can hammer flower your friends, maybe. That's what
Yes.
that'll be the new cremation.
Oh my God,
Just
that'd be great. I love anything that takes
everybody's
that-
face.
that takes money away from the funeral industrial complex. Amy Poehler, the great sage, wise woman, Amy Poehler, in her book, was talking about her divorce from Will Arnett. And she said, in our culture, we are brainwashed to believe that a successful relationship is one where the two of you die together. And I refuse to believe that. I had a very successful relationship with my husband and it ended. And I was like, oh, thank God. Right. And I think
I
that
love that.
some relationships are successful because we let them die, because we say goodbye. This is no longer necessary.
Yeah. We should maybe do a whole episode on this very theme. There's so many additional things I could say.
I mean, I want to do a million episodes about death. I just love talking
We're
about
just gonna
death.
do
It's
death
my-
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Okay.
8.
Death and art, death and art, death and art. Yay.
Get ready.
Yay. Thanks for listening, everybody. So if you have questions or you have things that like always pop into your mind when you're listening to us, by all means, reach out to us. Follow us on Instagram. I am Paula D. Atkinson.
I am Lisa Kays.
Wait, what are you on Instagram? You're
I'm at the Lisa Kays.
Sorry, that was confusing. I didn't.
Because there's
tell you what
evidently
Insta-
another one, and she's not the one.
There's another Lisa Kays. That's
Evidently.
and like us on not like us. What do they do on YouTube?
Like and subscribe.
Subscribe.
Right. Yeah. And
And
like.
And like. And do
Yes.
they press the bell thing?
That's subscribe.
Oh, that's subscribe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna get my son to do this.
N-
He's much better.
not a frequent YouTuber, obviously. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.